All right, we're finally back. This is CounterPick New Perspectives, our rebranding of the podcast that we used to do that was focused primarily on fighting games. Now we've broadened the umbrella to gaming in general, or gaming related topics, gaming and pop culture.
Honestly, I feel like this is what we were going to do from the beginning.
Pretty much, yeah. I like it because it gives us the ability to do more with it. So, my name is Samuel Ray, aka Dr. Sam, and with me is my co-host,
Samson, aka Cy Prime.
Yep. And so, we're brothers. We have a lot of experience with pop culture and games together. So by expanding upon what we can talk about, that gives us a lot more abilities to do things, topics, just find things to yammer on about. I know it's been a while since the first episode of season 2, the first proper episode. That's because some personal stuff came up and we were unable to get together and actually record for about 4 months.
Yeah, life happens. Don't call it a comeback.
Yeah.
We're here, we're ready to go, and we have a topic ready.
Yep. So we are back. We're going to try and make this a monthly thing again. And then me, I've expanded upon the brand with my morning boot up, weekly solo rambles over on my YouTube channel, which is also where this will be uploaded in addition to the podcast platforms. So we're going to get that ball rolling and try to keep up the momentum this time.
Yeah.
For the rest of this year, actually, it's our goal. As many months as we can.
And I've also got plans myself to get things going on Twitch as well as possibly on YouTube. So
yep.
Keep a lookout.
So today's topic, and essentially the idea behind this is we pick one topic and then we just go back and forth about our thoughts on it. So our topic today is nostalgia. And I think this is so fitting because we have been playing games for, well, myself, I've been playing games for more than 25 years. More than 25 years. I would say somewhere closer to 27 years. And Cy here has been playing games
22 years.
Yeah, so we've both got more than 20 years of games under our belt. And it was always a family thing. We were both, I was introduced by my father when I was about 3, and Cy was introduced by me from the time he was about 3, when he was old enough to use a controller.
Yeah, both started as Tails and Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah. So we've experienced a lot of the changes in the gaming landscape, especially considering we played Sega Genesis all the way up until we got our GameCube.
Yeah.
So we skipped the N64 and PlayStation 1 generation.
Although we did have friends that had like an N64, played some Pokemon Stadium and such.
Yeah, he was always with friends. But so honestly, we experienced a lot of that early generation, that Super NES, Sega Genesis, because the Sega Genesis is what we had, and all the way up until the GameCube. So we experienced a lot of older games than a lot of the younger generations, and a lot of that has been revisited in more recent games. Namely, in our case, most recently, Sonic Frontiers, because we have been Sonic fans since Sonic 2, and that was released in 1993. I believe it was, or 1992. So, about a year or 2 after I was born.
Right.
And so that's been around for a while. And then we kind of stuck with the franchise through its ups and downs. And boy, have there been a lot of ups and downs.
There was always something to enjoy.
Yeah.
Like, it may not have always been a masterpiece, but
yeah, we're the kind of people who try to enjoy things for what they are rather than what other people say they should be.
Yeah.
And so in Sonic Frontiers, we're not going to go like, the game's been around long enough.
Yeah, the game's been out for a while. Honestly, I was the one that was late to it because I'm not going to go into it a lot.
On YouTube, but the playthrough is still, I'm in Island 5.
Right.
By the time this is uploaded, most of the big story things will have already been revealed, and people have probably seen it on other channels and stuff. But so we're not going to worry too much about spoilers. We may not talk about the final spoilers because that's not really important to the topic of nostalgia, really. The final boss, it not really. It only mentions some.
But I was late to the game anyway because I right after the game was released, I had an accident, broke my wrist, so it took me a few months to actually get to the game.
Yeah, before your your wrist and your fingers could actually use a controller again properly.
Yeah, exactly.
And let alone play a fast-paced platformer like that.
Yeah, and I was originally planning to do something on YouTube with it, but I just decided to play it for myself. And honestly, I needed it at the time.
Yeah, and that accident was the same reason why we couldn't record any episodes of this podcast. But Sonic Frontiers brought together so many threads from across the franchise and really took elements of the lore and actually made them into a coherent continuity, because they hired Ian Flynn from the late Archie comics and the IDW comics to do the writing. And it really showed. The character writing was spot on, was excellent. The plot, while not the most complex or, it's not going to win an Oscar kind of plot, but it was good for a Sonic game. I would say it was the best plot since Sonic Adventure 2. It had that sort of character depth to it.
Actually, you could say it's the best plot since Sonic 06. I would argue.
Fair enough. Sonic 06 did have a really ambitious plot. It more failed to stick the landing on the mechanical, game design aspects with the being so rushed. It was so buggy. Like, if those bugs, like Project 06 fan project, to restore it into a more playable state, once that's done, I'm definitely going to play that, because I feel like that would make the game like what it was supposed to be, was basically a Sonic Adventure 3.
Yeah, but so on the topic though, because you're talking about
so it brought together so many things from across the franchise, so many references that weren't just empty references. See, we've seen some complaints on the internet that the references to past events in the lore, in the games, tying them together into an actual continuity, is just empty nostalgia pandering. And we disagree vehemently.
Well, first of all, I would say this game is the most connected with the past games that a Sonic game has ever been. Because while it's obvious that there is some sort of continuity, although there's been multiple different eras where things seem to randomly change, Sonic Adventure, suddenly there are humans, although things have been retconned to make that make sense. Like, the smaller islands have the animal people, larger islands have
they got rid of the two worlds theory completely.
But most of the Sonic games felt very disconnected from each other. Lost World, Sonic 06, the adventure games were connected to each other. What else was it? Like Sonic and the Blood. The storybook games are very disconnected.
Sonic Adventure 1 referenced Sonic CD. Even though Amy had the newer design, it directly referenced it when she was thinking back to the good old days. Yeah. So they were connected.
But ever since then, after Sonic Adventure, everything was almost like episodic, kind of like an old cartoon. Like,
the Wheat style.
It's the same characters, and that they've experienced past things, but it's never really referenced.
And they're never used in character growth or overarching plots for each character, and nothing of the sort. Yeah,
exactly. And this game brought it all together, made it feel like it's one actual world. You can't see me right now, but I'm gesturing wildly. But honestly, I think it's a really masterful use of this history that there is, because any Sonic fan is going to even though there's a lot of differentiation in this crowd, that crowd, what they enjoy. There's the 2D people, 3D people, that's
very
adventure crowd, the boost formula crowd. But I think most Sonic fans appreciate most of the lore in Sonic.
Yeah, because to be honest, Sonic the Hedgehog himself, he's very, there's the memes about the inspirations that the Sonic franchise took from Dragon Ball, especially with Super Sonic being basically Super Saiyan. And the characters, like people saying Knuckles is Piccolo and Shadow's Vegeta and so on.
Which, yes and no.
Yeah, and that's a different topic altogether that we might do an episode on, is like when media references other media, closely or not so closely, but parody or just reference or homage, that kind of stuff. But Sonic is a lot like Goku in that he's a flat arc character. He himself doesn't go through much change, much growth in his personality, or maturing in his personality through the experiences he's gone through. He kind of remains the same, having the same core tenets of his personality, and it's those core tenets of his personality that brings out the best in other characters.
Yeah, it's how he reflects in others, and how he, I guess, inspires others,
Yeah. And so, which in and of itself is a good trait of a heroic character, right? To be able to inspire others and to have that strong sense of justice and stick to his guns. Despite what's happening around him.
Of course, the comics get a little more into a nuance about like choices and stuff, but in the games, which is what we're mainly talking about, he doesn't really change.
No,
he just does things.
Yeah, and he reacts to the story and then does what he's gonna do according to his personality.
Right.
The other characters that bring in the more story depth, like in
mainly Tails.
Shadow.
Mainly Tails is the character that would be more like a traditional protagonist, where he grows, right?
Yeah.
He comes from being this child tag along with Sonic, but he shows promise at the beginning, when I swear this is something that was said back in the day, like that he came up with the spin dash.
He invented the spin dash in order to keep up with Sonic, Sonic was able to adapt it.
Yeah, which is why the first Sonic game didn't have the spin dash, and Sonic 2 introduced both Tails and the spin dash.
Yeah. And that was his ingenuity as a child. Roughly 4 years old or something like that around that time, 4 to 6. And then they further expanded upon that to mechanical genius in Sonic Adventure. And then in Sonic Adventure, he takes down Eggman, or Robotnik. I think he was kind of called both in that game, because they were trying to transition to the Japanese name Eggman, but he took him down by himself. He stopped the missile that had crashed and failed to detonate in Station Square, and then he defeated Eggman's four-legged walker. It's like protoform walker kind of thing, prototype walker, by himself without any tech of his own, just his own fighting ability.
So
and gain confidence in himself in doing so, without Sonic.
So Sonic is the like flat art character, but Tails is a little bit more of the like hero's journey almost.
I mean, heck, Tails' gameplay in Sonic Adventure was all about racing Sonic and kind of proving yourself.
And then in Sonic Adventure 2, he just does this a complete different thing.
In Sonic Adventure 2, he was basically the Tony Stark of the group. He was the one who came up with, he was like the Tony Stark and Captain America rolled in one, because he came up with the plan, he gave the orders.
I think we're getting a little off track because we haven't gotten to nostalgia.
Okay,
Well, I guess we're caught up in our nostalgia.
But so basically, like, in Sonic Frontiers, they directly referenced these things in the past, though, including his backslide in Sonic Forces.
Directly. I love that.
And how Tails addresses it, and Sonic's like, wait, what? Like, he didn't know. They never had a chance to talk about that, and Sonic had no idea. And he's like, hey, buddy, you're worrying me a bit. Like, they reference that, and then Tails, through his portion of the story in Sonic Frontiers, he comes to kind of a realization that
Third Island.
His growth hasn't been invalidated by what happened in Sonic Forces, but rather he sees himself as being inconsistent in his confidence and his ability, and then he decides that he needs to take a journey of his own away from Sonic to find himself, basically.
I also find it funny that Tails' anger kind of is also in a way a stand-in for the audience themselves.
Frustration with how he was portrayed in Sonic Forces.
And I definitely felt that.
So they directly referenced that and addressed it in the character writing, which a callback to, while it's not as old a game because it's the very previous entry in the series, they did call back to that, but in doing so and making character growth, Sonic reminded him of what happened in Sonic Adventure 1 and in Adventure 2. The stuff with Chaos, the stuff with Eggman and the missile in Station Square, and the stuff with the Emerald, the fake Emerald, and the Eclipse Cannon and stuff like that. And then they directly in conversation reference the Eclipse Cannon and such. So and Chaos. So like legitimately, they reference the past to serve the character progression in the story. That, by definition, is not empty nostalgia pandering. That's using continuity and lore from the past to serve the characters in the now. And in a good way, because now Tails, if they capitalize on this properly, Tails could become a way better character than he's ever been.
Yeah, and I like to think, like, basically the use of the past in that way also serves looking toward the future.
Yeah, exactly. There's a potential for more growth for Tails in the future, whether it be in a spin-off game or in future entries of the Sonic franchise.
And all three of the other characters, Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, they look forward to the future and what they're going to change, what they're going to do.
Amy finds a goal that's not related to Sonic.
Yeah.
Even though it's referenced that she, her feelings for Sonic are referenced and stuff like that, and Sonic doesn't exactly push her away or anything. He's actually empathetic. He shows that he has a close friendship with her.
Yeah, and if I might take a small side road here, I saw it on a comment on a YouTube video of some of like the Sonic Frontier stuff, I forget what, but that this random person, they said that they preferred it when Amy was more like outspoken and confident about her love for Sonic, but I vehemently disagree. There's that word again, because the past Amy, what she showed, that was not love, that was obsession and infatuation.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a much more accurate, well done representation of love, like possible love, for them to just be able to sit down and have a deep conversation with each other.
Which they did, yeah.
And be honest and be like, and Amy is like, hey, there's this thing I want to do, but I'm just kind of worried that it'll take me away from you. But Sonic is, basically kind of just says, hey, we'll see each other again.
Yeah, he's like, you know what?
Go for your
go for it. And I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear all about it when you come back.
Like it's very human.
Yeah.
Despite
it wasn't.
They're not technically human.
Yeah, it wasn't one note of Amy just chasing after Sonic and Sonic running away.
Exactly, and this is what I've said to Sam in a previous conversations that we've had about Frontiers. They all feel like more rounded characters, people.
Heck, even Sonic,
not just functions in a story.
Yeah, heck, even Sonic actually was more mature in this game in like the way he thought about things and the way he like talked to Tails, especially when he was giving him words of wisdom, and Tails even had to say, "When did you become so wise?" And Sonic was like, "I have my moments," just he had a little bit of that cockiness, but he was able to talk seriously when he needed to. He wasn't just answering everything with quips and jokes and juvenile behavior. This was the most mature depiction of Sonic, and when compared to some depictions in the past. But going back to the topic of nostalgia, with Amy, they didn't really go much into the past, really. Knuckles, though, they really reference a lot of stuff from Angel Island, the architecture being the similarities in the architecture, which if you follow the story of the game, you'll find that there's actually good reasons, and that the ancients in this game are tied directly to, the echidnas and the Chow, and it's great, and Chaos himself, and it's great stuff. And that in itself wasn't the nostalgia pandering either, because it ties the story and kind of gives you a story to the echidnas, the architecture on the echidnas, Angel Island, the emeralds themselves, the Chaos Emeralds, explaining how they got to Earth, or they never call it Earth, but they've said the term earthquake, so we can assume it's Earth.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It's the planet. We can just call it Earth.
Yeah, and then the Master Emeralds even mentioned, actually, by the ancients in the flashbacks. They say that we found, and that they are not actually tied. The Master Emerald is not tied so far, anyway, not tied directly to the Chaos Emeralds, because the Master Emerald was already on Earth, and the Chaos Emeralds came from the Ancients' planet. So, but they were drawn to Earth because of the Master Emerald in their travels. And then, it built upon and it enriched the lore of the Sonic franchise by referring to the past, but not just referring, connecting to the past. I can see why some people would think empty and nostalgia pandering from some of the vocal references that Sonic can make if you're idling around. He'll just mention hey, this reminds me of the Babylon Temple. I wonder what Jet's up to. Or, I know a time traveler. You want us to, go back and change something?
Yeah, there are some of those offhand references, and those also have their place. But even aside from the
I think
other characters.
in one of the idle.
I also found here, apparently, I didn't remember this, but a site here I found says that Tangle from the comics was mentioned in a cut.
Yeah.
But also, aside from like the Amy, Knuckles, Tails story stuff, for instance, mentioning the Eclipse cannon, it's not just an empty reference. It's, hey, this weapon that was used to destroy the Ancients is basically as powerful as the Eclipse cannon.
Well, not even that. Actually, they had multiple turrets on the Star.
Oh yeah, it was the turrets.
Those each
The
have
Ancients turrets.
comparable power to the Eclipse cannon by themselves, individually, and multiple of those things were not able to take on this entity that.
Yeah. So
destroyed the Ancients.
it's not empty pandering. It's using something that the audience knows
As a frame of
reference. Because if you just say, "Oh, this cannon is super powerful," like, great. How do you measure that? But we know from Sonic Adventure 2 that the Eclipse cannon is powerful enough to destroy the Earth in one shot.
When powered with 7 Chaos Emeralds.
With 7 Chaos Emeralds, yeah.
With 1 emerald or 3 or whatever is able to take a chunk off the moon. I think it was just 1 emerald. So yeah.
And the Ancients have these cannons
Just lined up.
all over their islands that aren't directly powered by even 1 Chaos Emerald, right?
No.
They're like systems were powered by Chaos Emeralds, but they didn't like shove the stone into one of these cannons.
No.
But it's as powerful as the Eclipse cannon.
with just a fraction
and
of
that wasn't
an
even
emerald's
able
power.
to stop the thing that
Destroy the Ancients' planet.
destroyed destroyed their planet because they ended up on Earth. So it's a frame of reference. You know? It's just like when you say like, oh, a blue whale is as big as a school bus, or I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a frame of reference.
Yeah, and by keeping it in the lore continuity, it establishes more. It establishes that those things in the past games did in fact happen, and still have ramifications in the now.
Yeah, and it helps the audience to understand the stakes and the reality of it, and it also makes sense for the characters in the story to use as a frame of reference.
Yeah, because the characters in the story shouldn't be referencing stuff that exists in our real world.
Yeah.
They should reference stuff that exists in their world. So it's definitely not empty nostalgia pandering. Some of the little throwaway lines that Sonic says when you're idling around, yeah, that's a little closer to that, but even then,
Yeah, it's fine.
but then like another one, like, okay, spoiler for the end of Knuckles Island, which has already been uploaded on my YouTube channel. But after Sonic defeats the Titan of the second island, Knuckles is like, if I had been Super Knuckles, it would have been over faster. So while many might say, oh, nostalgia pandering, empty, no, they recanonized Super Knuckles when after Sonic Adventure, after the classic games, Sega like mandates for that only male hedgehogs could go super with the Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah.
To kind of explain why only Sonic, Silver, and Shadow were the ones who went super in Sonic 06. When Knuckles and Tails were right there, and in classic Genesis games, they both could go super.
And why Knuckles and Tails didn't go super in Sonic Heroes.
Yeah, so they explained that away by saying only male hedgehogs. They did a retcon, outside of the games. It was just a Sega, PR thing. But then in the game proper, they recanonized Super Knuckles proper.
At least gave the potential to get into that.
Well, yeah, but for Knuckles to say it means that it's canon.
Yeah, I guess.
And then that in turn recanonizes Super Tails, who was busted in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. He was actually more powerful than Hypersonic. Let's just say that. Which also, again, Tails' potential kind of thing, which has always been an underlying thing for the character.
Right. Especially in the crazier moments in the Archie comics. But
oh, yeah. Which are not that, but yeah. And so they, by referencing the past, they're able to, like I said, enrich the future, make it add more depth to the current storylines, and give them actually more options to do things for the future, rather than doing less, like with the games from around Sonic Colors to Sonic Generations, where the stories were very simplistic and very, Monster of the Week, doesn't impact any of the games in the future.
And if I might get into a slightly different way that it was used, Eggman, the Egg Memos and Sage,
Those weren't
particularly he mentioned Maria, which is not something that Eggman really mentions often.
He hasn't mentioned her since, I think, the either Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic Adventure 2, where he knew he knew her name would be Gerald's passcode when he broke into Prison Island. Meaning he was already aware of Maria's existence in Sonic Adventure 2, because he's like, this is obviously going to be the password, Maria. Boom, and it gets in.
But so because there wasn't that much screen time we could really have with Eggman and Sage, right? But I think they spent it
What time
very well. But also the Egg Memos give a bit extra, like supplemental information that enriches that on the side. You know, it's not necessarily needed for the direct plot of the game, but it's not needed for the direct plot of the game. So, which is why I would think that they put it into the Egg Memos on the side. But it gives a good reasoning and like connection to why he would end up seeing Sage in more of a familial manner, seeing that resemblance to Maria, who he apparently knew, or at least his family mentioned a lot in conversation.
Well, and remember, the appearances of like the areas in the cyberspace and stuff are tied to the memories of the people in them, right? Sage didn't take her physical form, so to speak, until Eggman got pulled into cyberspace. Then her physical form was probably drawn off of his memories of the young Maria when they were both children, his cousin. So that she probably has a physical resemblance to child Maria. That's why her hair would be shorter than Maria's was in Shadow's flashback when she was a teenager. But it makes sense because, like, Sage was just an AI in that little disc in the first cutscene, and then once he injected her into cyberspace, then she kind of started to, adapt the data in cyberspace, and then he got sucked in because she pulled him in to keep him safe from the threat she gained knowledge of. So that was her pulling him in, and then to keep him safe there. And then she took her form and all that kind of stuff and started to develop a personality and all that kind of stuff.
But so, like, to like go over real quick, like the nostalgia can be used, yes, as just little fun Easter eggs, which has its place. It can be used to open up the possibilities in storytelling, right?
Yeah.
To the future. It can be used to supplement character study, and it can be used as a frame of reference for the stakes in the story. So, I think it's safe to say nostalgia has more different uses than one might think just looking at the surface and saying, oh, nostalgia. It's kind of become a buzzword of sorts, but there's more nuance to it. And the reason why nostalgia is used a lot is because it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
But it's not always cheap.
And that said, we can kind of, I want to branch that off into a different thing.
Go away from Sonic, because this has been the Sonic podcast for about.
But I want to branch that way because, like, honestly, and mind you, we don't script these or plan these out per se. We just get a topic and we just go.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is off the cuff, but nostalgia itself isn't always a bad thing. I actually, somewhat recently, maybe like a few weeks ago, watched a video about nostalgia, and like in reality, I don't think nostalgia is always a bad thing. Nostalgia is what kind of keeps us connected to the things of our past, right? Things that may have had a formative or effect on us in a formative way, or something like that. While nostalgia is not always accurate to the quality of the thing in today's terms, it isn't always a bad thing when used right.
Well, just about like many things, it's bad when you get too much, and
Or when nostalgia is all that it's founded upon.
yeah, and I think people get frustrated by this because of the fact that in entertainment nowadays, there isn't that much that's new compared to people wanting to use, existing IPs, existing recognizable things in entertainment, right? To get eyes on it, because like, what is the first thing people are going to notice? This random new thing, or we're rebooting, I don't know, Superman, like,
Yeah, I mean, obviously nostalgia can be used poorly and it can be used well, but
and it's used a lot nowadays, but I think that isn't necessarily like it can blind people to, like, someone can get so sick of nostalgia because of all of the pandering and empty ways that it's used, that something that's done well, like Frontiers, like we were talking about, gets boiled down and tossed aside by some people, saying that, it's just nostalgia. Yes, the nostalgia is there, but like, try to judge things on their own merits, right?
Exactly. Because, like, I mean, if you think about a lot of things, right? A lot of entertainment type stuff, especially long-running things, because we're talking about a long-running series, like we were talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, which has been around since 1991 or 1990. Oh, well, it's something like that.
Over 30 years.
Nostalgia. I mean, it exists because of. It exists because of nostalgia to an extent, Like, how can you have something that runs for such a long time without nostalgia being some sort of factor, right? Like Mario, right? If Mario wasn't so widely recognizable,
no one would let him get away with the games having basically the same story every time.
Yeah, nostalgia in that case is the only reason why it is still around and alive as much as it is, and as popular as it is. So nostalgia is not always an inherently bad thing. It's just people have to remember that what's important is how it's used. Is it used cheaply to promote a poor product?
Clickbait, basically.
Yeah, is it used as clickbait, like a lot of modern reboots of stuff?
Yeah,
where it's used to either clickbait people to watch a poor quality product, or to bait people into a reboot that then just completely warps and desecrates it.
Or
for the sake of subversion or political stuff and whatnot.
Or even just to get the people, the bigwigs that throw money at these projects, right, to be more confident that it's going to sell. Because unfortunately, it's just how it works. People are more likely to give money to some, like, both the audience and then therefore the people who have the investment in these businesses, right?
Yeah.
That give the money and get the money from it, to make things happen.
Yeah. So it's nostalgia is a tool. It's not an evil.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way, because many tools can be used for evil, but they're not inherently evil. So I don't think nostalgia should be seen as an inherently bad thing. It's all about how it's used.
Yeah.
Ultimately. Because look at the MCU, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe is built upon comics that have existed since before either of us were.
There's an up and down to that.
Well, yeah, but they're built upon IPs and characters that have existed since before we were born. The majority of them, anyway. The good ones. The Infinity Saga. And so,
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't see you much, but
yeah, but like the Infinity Saga was excellent. And we were gripped for the entire 11 years it was running. And all those characters existed before we were born. And, you know, we grew up with those characters in the form of the comics and cartoons, especially the cartoons. And like, because when Iron Man came out, he was not an A-lister, right? But we knew who he was because of the cartoons and the comics and stuff.
yeah.
And we were immediately on board because we knew Iron Man. We knew the Fantastic Four before the MCU was a thing. We knew, you know, Spider-Man is much more popular, but we knew the Fantastic Four. We knew Iron Man. We knew Thor. Dad's favorite superhero is Thor. You know, we knew all these characters before they were even, you know, casted for live action acting, and that got, you know, it got the pre-existing fans butts in the seats. You know, it's what got the butts in the seats that allowed it to grow and flourish all the way up until Infinity War and Endgame, which was such a good capstone to that whole story. And here's the thing, those were capstones to 11-year stories. In a way, a little bit of a nostalgia in there for the people who were on board from the start of it, right?
I guess so.
You know, from the Incredible Hulk that came out, was that just before Iron Man 1 or just after Iron Man?
Just after.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like, nostalgia was used in that case as a good tool. It was able to give a satisfying build-up to then a satisfying conclusion. And you know, some people say Endgame and Infinity War weren't exactly the most cinematic masterpieces in terms of the writing, but it was rather the build-up that it then was the payoff for that made it so great.
I'm not sure how much of it was nostalgia, though. They did, like, I'm not sure if we're talking about nostalgia anymore.
I mean, 11 years of stories, that's, you know, a decade. That's a lot of people who started watching the MCU as kids were then either teenagers or adults when Infinity War and Endgame. That's nostalgia. The stuff you grew up watching, coming to a conclusion.
Yeah, but it wasn't really like references in the way that we were talking about in Sonic Frontiers, right?
Well, but nostalgia takes many forms. It's not just references, but it also can be the foundation of the very characters or IP's existence as well, like we already mentioned. So, you know, it's definitely a lighter of nostalgia because we're not talking about like 20-plus-year-old nostalgia, like in most cases, right? Like the stuff from the 80s being rebooted now. That's the truest form of nostalgia for sure. And that's what most people do think of when they think nostalgia, right? It's 80s stuff being rebooted in you know, 2020s or 2010s. Which happened a lot, you know, like Voltron reboots and, you know, Thundercats reboot that then tanked and stuff like that. So that's what most people think of, So
that's right.
But a lot of people think of that for nostalgia, and I'll be honest, I can kind of see where the knee-jerk, you know, kind of negative reaction to it comes from.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's been used too much.
And a lot of times
weak
products and just, you know, did not end up well and ended up tainting the IP more than it enriched it. In the case of Sonic Frontiers, it enriched the product, especially compared to the like 3 releases before it, you know, in terms of story writing.
Yeah, because Sonic Mania, great game.
I meant 3D releases, but yeah, I meant 3D releases.
Okay.
Sonic.
I don't know.
Colors, Lost World, and Forces.
Colors and Lost World were the ones before Forces.
Colors and Lost World and Forces were the 3D games, and none of those had really great stories, you know? Like, amazing story writing. They were very simple.
Theme Park, Eggman, Go.
Yeah, that one was like a more like a Saturday morning cartoon than anything.
I mean, but it was still enjoyable. But
the gameplay was great.
But like I said, episodic, and it basically forgot that any of Sonic's friends existed other than Tails. Like,
unless you're playing the 3DS version, in which case you run into all sorts of his friends around the amusement park, making it feel more, you know, like people are actually there. Yeah, interestingly enough, a lot of people consider the 3DS version the actual canon version because it also has the supersonic boss battle against the corrupted Mother Wisp that the Wii version didn't have. Yeah, the Wii version just had that boss fight against the you know, Eggman's final machine, and then the all colors blast, you know, homing attack blast or whatever, and then, you know, you run away from the black hole for 30 seconds and then ending cutscene. It definitely felt rushed, but then the 3DS version not only had that, but it also had dialogue with the Sonic's friends that you run into around the theme park, and then in cutscenes, and then the final boss battle with Super Sonic, because it also had proper special stages to get the Chaos Emeralds too, to unlock that final boss battle. It's actually, if anything, the more canon version.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it even has all the cutscenes, the full motion video cutscenes from the Wii version, just compressed, so they're really low quality.
Right, looking crunchy.
But they're there, meaning it's actually all the content from the Wii version and more. It's the canon version.
Huh.
Yeah.
Anyway, like what?
But yeah, like but that was an aside. That was a total left field aside. But regardless,
we live in left field.
Sonic Frontiers. Yeah, Sonic Frontiers definitely used nostalgia to enrich the story and to bring the lore together into a coherent continuity.
Like what other games have like dipped into the nostalgia recently?
I'm not sure about recently. Like I know, like Monster Hunter Rise has been pulling a lot of monsters from previous Monster Hunter games, and that can be a form of nostalgia. Like,
I mean, but that franchise always pulls previous monsters, right?
Not always, but often. Yeah. Like, okay, Monster Hunter Generations was definitely the nostalgia.
Okay, that was nostalgia. Yeah,
it was the celebration of all of.
It's called Generations.
Yeah, it was the celebration of all the four generations.
Sonic Generations.
That was a nostalgia game.
That was founded on nostalgia.
Yeah, because all the stages were past stages reimagined.
Although, funny thing, like nobody really had a problem with it, especially and like classic Sonic was a new thing, bringing him into a modern game with modern Sonic.
It's only the revisionist people that kind of say Generations was actually in hindsight, Generations wasn't good.
Yeah, but
it was great.
But people started getting tired of classic Sonic coming around
because they overused
forces because it didn't make sense.
Yeah,
and he didn't even interact with modern Sonic at all. He was just doing his thing over with Tails.
And then they had to like retcon or change it to where it's now an offshoot continuity. Offshoot timeline.
So to compare those two classic Sonic appearances, right? Generations, it feels like a celebration.
Yeah.
With the nostalgia,
like Monster Hunter Generations.
Forces feels like that
soulless pandering.
That clickbait of nostalgia. Throw classic Sonic into this game. Why? I don't know. People liked classic Sonic last time, right?
Yeah.
That's
yeah, no, it definitely would have been better if they saved classic Sonic for a Sonic Generations 2. Like after another, 10 to 20 years, do another celebration, for one of his, number 0. So like his 30th anniversary or something, rather than... Oh, actually, no, Forces was the 30th anniversary game, now I think about it, so I think they were trying to do that with Generations, but they never
explained why classic Sonic ended up there, because we had like the Phantom Ruby.
True ending explains it. After you beat the true final boss with Super Sonic, a portal is open and he gets sucked into it.
Yeah, no, but
the emeralds.
That doesn't explain
why did the Phantom Ruby do that?
Because it looked like a Phantom Ruby in Mania.
I think they referred to it as the Phantom Ruby too.
But it did something completely different from the Phantom Ruby.
It opened up a portal and
it still makes no sense.
Nope, because the Phantom Ruby was supposed to be like illusory powers.
And Classic got sent back at the end of Forces. I don't know, maybe he was like one of those illusions, like the villain illusions that didn't say anything. But this Classic Sonic had like free will. So I don't know.
Speaking of the villain illusions, that was another case of nostalgia being used poorly because in the marketing material they showed Chaos Zero, Shadow, Zavok, and Metal Sonic as like villains that Sonic's have to fight, and then they never even hardly any of them got boss fights at all.
Yeah, Chaos Zero's back. Zavok is here for some reason. Yeah, Metal Sonic, I mean, he's been here all.
Zavok and Metal Sonic are the only ones that got proper boss fights.
And Shadow, the villain, for some reason.
Chaos Zero got one-shotted by Classic Sonic, and fake Shadow got one-shotted by Shadow, by the real Shadow.
And then the boss fight, Zavok acts like he's an actual person.
Yeah, he acts like actual Zavok.
But then the rest of them just are they act like
the Metal Sonic fight, you actually see the glitchiness and stuff. the Zabok boss
so
fight.
inconsistent.
Sonic's punching him and stuff, and at the end of it, punching and kicking, and he's reacting like real Zabok, and you don't see him like fizzle out of existence, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they were super inconsistent with it. It was bad. Like, people had to mod in a Chaos Zero boss fight.
Yeah.
That takes place in the middle of that cutscene, and it's like where you fight him with classic Sonic, and like if they had done something like that, it would have been way better. But yeah, it's so Sega has been super inconsistent with their nostalgia stuff. Because in the case of Sonic Mania,
sense. It was clickbait.
yeah, because Sonic Mania wasn't nostalgia done right, because it was a classic style Sonic game, as if there was one made on the Sega Saturn.
Although one of the complaints I've seen about Mania is that there should have been more original stages, because the original stages that we got in Mania were so good.
Yeah, and then the majority of the stages though were retools of old stages. Yeah. So I mean, but I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I can see both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I enjoy it as it is, but I do see the point made that, like, hey, these original stages were really good. I wish we had more of these.
Well, I recently became aware of official statement that it was said that by an actual representative of Sega, that they're going forward, they're going to give Sonic Team a bigger budget for the next 3D Sonic game, and that they're going to make another 2D Sonic game. It's already been confirmed.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, so maybe the future Sonic Mania 2, as we'll just tentatively call it, can have more original stages now, since the formula has already been proven to be, profitable, right? Successful. So now they don't need to do it as a callback to previous stages anymore. They can go more original going forward with that, side series, right? Have Christian Whitehead and his team, Hit Cannon Studios do it and do their thing on that again, but with a bigger budget, and do it bigger, right?
Yeah.
And go more original stuff, original songs, original stages, and so on. And then,
if you don't have any ideas of other video games that like,
how about Marvel Ultimate Alliance? Marvel Ultimate Alliance was like, culmination of all sorts of characters and storylines and stuff from the comics.
But that kind of like retreads what we already talked about with the MCU.
Yeah.
But I remember another way that nostalgia can be used in video games.
Okay.
Retro style games.
Oh yeah.
Shovel Knight, Cave Story, right? Games that intentionally look and feel like old games in a way, but in the modern day.
Or neo-retro continuations or reboots of those old franchises, like Streets of Rage 4, right?
Yeah.
A follow-up to the classic Streets of Rage 1 through 3 series. New graphical style, but same old style gameplay, right? Just kind of iterated upon and expanded upon to feel a little more modern. That was it done right.
And Sonic Mania was also this. It was a Genesis style.
Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, which I've heard online people actually claim that is the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up, even compared to the old ones, which are in and of themselves some of the best beat 'em up arcade games of all time. A lot of that, especially Turtles in Time.
So yeah, like either in visuals or in gameplay or both. You have Sonic Mania, games like Mega Man 9, 10, and 11.
Oh yeah, where they went back to the classic NES style. Mega
Man 9 and 10 had the old style.
Yeah.
Mega Man 11 looks new, but it still is the classic Mega Man game.
Mega Man 9 and 10 were divisive too, because some people loved them going back to the NES style because they grew up with it. They had the nostalgia. Others, like us, who didn't care, who didn't play those as much.
We're like, why can't we slide?
Yeah. It's like Mega Man 1 and 2 style. We can't even slide.
I want to slide.
Well, that was just in Mega Man 9. In Mega Man 10, they brought back the slide.
Well, yeah, because Mega Man 9 was harkening back to Mega Man 1.
Yeah, 1 and 2, where there was no slide, no charge shot. And then Mega Man 10 brought back the slide and the charge shot like it was Mega Man 4, which is my favorite of the classic Mega Mans, actually.
Yeah.
Where they introduced the charge shot and refined the slide and all that kind of stuff. But still, I don't have as much attachment to the classic Mega Man series, so it didn't grip me as much.
Yeah, we played a little more.
That didn't apply to me.
Well, you played a little more of X.
I played much more of X than
I played much more of 2 of the Zero games. We only had 2 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
Mega Man 02 and Mega Man 04. No, Mega Man 01 and Mega Man 04.
I think it was 2 and 4. We played all of them via emulators and the collection anyway. So
Yeah,
eventually.
that's true.
But I think of the original one, I only have 4 on a cartridge.
Yeah, and then you have games like Cuphead, which like the visuals are a nostalgia for old cartoons.
Yeah.
But the gameplay is a nostalgia for old run and gun games.
Yeah, like Contra, down to the hard as nails challenge.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like in nostalgia. There's been a lot of cases of nostalgia being used well.
And games like Undertale that have a nostalgic graphical style, but the gameplay is not like
the
based
graphical
on
style
it,
harkens
really.
back to and even some of the gameplay styles harken back
Yeah,
to
the gameplay-
the Mother series, Earthbound. Yeah,
like the
even the
the
RPG system.
overworld and stuff, and but like some of the gameplay takes from you know,
bullet shooters. Yeah,
yeah, bullet curtain, and but it's kind of its own thing.
yeah, but it took a lot of ideas from old stuff and combined them into something new and fresh,
Yeah, so
along with some
you
new
know,
ideas as well.
like modern retro games, basically, I would call it.
Yeah, well, neo retro is the term.
Neo,
for that,
okay,
yeah.
neo retro.
And honestly, like aside from Sega and Capcom, none of the other big companies, like publishers and developers, have done anything neo retro.
Yeah, it's
always
usually
indie games.
It's usually indie. You know, like with Shovel Knight, Cave Story is retro, right? I mean, Cave Story is indie, right?
Yeah, it was one of the first indies to hit it big,
Yeah.
actually. And it was originally released for free before it got picked up by Nicalis. I forget how to pronounce it.
I think it's Nicalis.
I think it's Nicalis, but I always said Nicalis. But yeah,
But yeah, and you got like, I guess Dead Cells counts too.
kind of.
It's sort of pixely.
The pixel art style, yes. The gameplay is
like retro art style.
yeah. And so
See, there's different areas.
yeah, there's so many areas,
nostalgia.
levels of it. Yeah. And so, but
Different forms.
a lot of the indie games, or like indie with a good budget, which is, I guess you could consider the the new AA games, like Turtles Revenge.
Yeah, and I think
Turtles new one and stuff like
And I
that.
think another aspect to think of it on, right, is like most of these neo-retro games are indie games. One way that it can help is that it doesn't take as much intensive like development to make these more retro visual styles, right?
Yeah.
Undertale was the visuals were made by one guy.
Yeah, one guy.
just $100.
And the music and everything.
I think there were some other people that made some songs and like like drew character designs or whatever, but like
Right.
he did the
bulk of it.
the pixel art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Shovel Knight,
Yeah. Shovel Knight, he went
Cave
got big.
Story,
Yeah.
like the retro visual styles both work as like, hey, we love this, but also it's just easier to make. And graphical fidelity isn't the only thing that matters.
For sure. And like, yeah, so that nostalgia can be used as a good tool for that too. And honestly, I'll be honest, in recent
effective.
in recent years, I haven't bought that many like AAA games or like brand new full price games over the last, I would say, 3 years. The majority of what I've enjoyed has been like the few ones like Monster Hunter Rise. I'm 300 plus hours in and still going.
Yeah.
350, I think I've passed already. Sonic Frontiers. There have been a few Jedi Fallen Order, but I got into that late when it was on sale.
Right.
I didn't buy that right out the gates, but I definitely it was a worthwhile purchase for me. That's for sure. It's a good game. I'm looking forward to Jedi Survivor big time this year. And like I haven't bought that many full price new like big games recently, but a lot of what I've enjoyed has been more of the indie level or indie with a bigger budget kind of.
Are we going 1 hour or 2?
Under 2.
Okay. Because I have another thing, like something that often dips into nostalgia in video games. Pokemon,
Gosh.
right?
And that's one that's done it both right and wrong, because the wrong would be
Let's
like
do Pikachu. Let's do Pikachu again. Who should get a Mega? Charizard. Who should also get a Mega? Charizard. He gets 2.
Yeah, Mewtwo gets 2.
Mewtwo gets 2, yeah.
The Gigantamax, Charizard, Pikachu for sure. Meow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Becomes Long Cat.
Yeah, so in Pokemon, I've seen it a lot end up doing it's like certain Pokemon.
Gigantamax even became.
Yeah, he becomes the
Chonk.
classic boy
Yeah.
when he was Chonk. But yeah, in Pokemon, it a lot of the time, and also like the Pikachu clones. Every generation there's a Pikachu-esque Pokemon. You know, you got +1 mine, and you got the Emolga, you got Pachirisu. That was Gen 4.
I think. I don't remember exactly.
I think it was +1 mine, and then it was Pachirisu, then it was Emolga.
Right.
Then it was
Gen 2 was Pichu. Yeah.
Yeah, Gen 2 was Pichu, that's right.
Right,
Gen
maybe.
3 was +1 mine, and then you got
So Pachirisu was.
Pachirisu was Gen 4, Emolga was 5, Dedenne was 6.
Yeah.
And I don't know past that really off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of like almost preferential treatment with Pokemon.
Yeah, that's why the term Gen 1 is given a negative connotation in the community because.
And then you also get like Ash Greninja.
Yeah, because of that.
That's kind of stuff, but it's also like a tie into what was happening in the anime at the time.
And they've recently changed Battle Bond, so now it doesn't change their appearance anymore. Battle Bond is now in the mainline games, like in the current ones, but it doesn't change their appearance. But it does give them the stat increases and stuff like that when the requirements are triggered. But yeah, it's over. That actually means if you transfer your Ash Greninja into the newer games via the Pokemon Home, I think it is called now.
It stops being Ash Greninja.
It doesn't transfer
just
now.
Greninja.
Yeah, so it actually loses features. But yeah, Pokemon is definitely one that I think sticks a little too close to nostalgia because in a weird way in the game design because they've taken more steps backwards than they've taken forwards. Like
and like Sun and Moon was my favorite Pokemon game in a while because like I never actually because we've talked about this, we didn't have Game Boys.
Yeah, so we didn't have Game Boys.
So we didn't really play those. Like we played some of the Game Boy games on like emulators or whatever. But
it was
the first Pokemon game that I owned was Pokemon X, and then I also had Omega Ruby, and then Sun.
Yeah.
Right? And Pokemon Sun, like. Pokemon X was still very classic Pokemon. It had the basic structure,
challenge structure.
Sun and Moon shook things up a lot, and loved it. And then they went right back.
Though it made it harder to replay. It made it less replayable.
Yeah, I guess because like
the gym challenge is more infinitely replayable.
Yeah, I guess so.
And also better for things like Nuzlocke and whatnot. So it is more replayable. But yeah, it was great because it did change up the formula completely, which made it feel so fresh. Yeah. And then like Gen 5, right, was at the time was seen as almost a blight upon the series because they threw away all pre-existing Pokemon until you beat the main story campaign. Except
a lot of the new Pokemon that they made for Gen 5 were very obviously like harkening back to previous, like, you had stuff like Clink Clang, the living gears, which are basically an iteration on like Magnemite line.
Yeah.
You had the rock Pokemon, what was it? Roggenrola.
Yeah.
Basically this game's Geodude. They threw them in the caves. You had Woobat, that was the bat Pokemon to replace Zubat.
Yeah.
It's literally called Woobat.
And at the time people
it both threw away a lot of the old, like tossed aside a lot of the old legacy Pokemon, but also nostalgically created these new Pokemon kind of in the images of those Gen 1 ones.
Yeah, and that's where you get to homage. But it was a special case because at the time the majority of the Pokemon fandom disliked that generation, Black and White. And Black to White too.
Yeah, because most of the Pokemon games, they have a number of new Pokemon, but also keep a number of the old Pokemon, especially Generation 1, to fill out the roster. You always have the Zubats, the Pidgeys.
And then usually after you beat the main story, then you unlock the national dex and you can get all Pokemon by transferring and stuff.
Yeah.
To get that nostalgia quota in there, or at least make it available. But here's the crazy thing, like, people didn't like Gen 5 when it first came out, but then in retrospect, it's like seen now as, after the several games that have come out since then, it's seen as one of the best. A new form of nostalgia. Once it was old enough for it to be somewhat nostalgic, people started to see it in a different light than when it was brand new, and now they love it. And they wish more of the new games would take some hints from that, such as hard mode. Especially because of how many people nowadays are adults. A large chunk of the Pokemon fan base are adults who grew up with it, and keeping the games. They see a lot of the newer games as baby easy, and without the ability to introduce challenge without putting on self-imposed restrictions like the newest one, Scarlet and Violet, took away the ability to toggle the hold or switch when upon one. You can no longer.
There was no battle style change of going to the actual PvP style. You can't switch every time they throw in a new one.
You go into settings. They removed it from Sword and Shield. It was in there in Sword and Shield, and in Scarlet and Violet, they're like, let's take away people's ability to turn off the ability to switch Pokemon.
Why would you take that out? It takes more effort to take it. I mean, I guess they would have to program, but it's a thing they already know how to do. It's already going to be in the game, that functionality, because that's how it is when you fight other players in Pokemon.
Yeah.
There was no extra. It took more effort to take that out of single player.
This has been a side rant. Yes, and you just learned that too.
Yes.
So it hit you first.
That is why I'm angry.
Yeah, no, they legitimately took that out.
It took more effort to take away options.
Yeah. It's stupid. They're literally trying to pigeonhole everyone into playing the way the Nintendo way, right? The way we want you to play it. That's the Nintendo way. And if you want to play it a different way, you have to go out of your way to do it, like Nuzlocke and stuff, which is self-imposed stuff. But they took away options in the game to make it self-imposed.
Need Reggie to come back and fix this.
Yeah. And also, there's no option, for example, to skip cutscenes or anything like that.
I mean, there's not.
Yeah, there's no option for, you can't turn off time limits in PvP. But you can't. Here's the thing. So when you create a lobby,
direct battle.
Yeah, when you go out to play online with someone and it's a lobby where you direct connect with a friend,
or whatever,
you can't turn off the time limit. And then here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. In the official battle, what is it called? The battle spot or whatever. Battle spot rules. Where the official rules where you go on in with the matchmaking.
Yeah.
There are modes with no time limit. So it's available in the game, but players don't have access to it on their own accord. Nintendo'd it real hard on that one. Like just the Iron Grip, you're going to play this the way we want you to play, and you're going to have the options we give you.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they took steps backwards in Scarlet Violet. Not to mention...
And the experience share.
Yeah, you can't.
I remember you saying that you can turn that off, but...
You can't turn that off either. And so they took that away as well. Yeah, they took away that option. And then although I think that was taken away in a previous entry.
Yeah, I remember that.
Or something. And then they also just totally flubbed up the open world experience to an extent. Like, most of the people who love Scarlet and Violet are the people who it's like one of their first experiences with the Pokemon series, or they haven't played that many of the past games.
Well, people enjoyed it, but that doesn't mean it was like.
And they said the story writing was really
great as a Pokemon game. Like,
apparently the story writing and the character writing was great in this one, and the way the 3 storylines culminate at the end is actually apparently really good. And then but it's funny because they have these like real emotional cutscenes where the characters' mouths move, but there's still no dialogue. And they're like, it just highlighted the improved story writing. It highlighted just how much they missed from not having voice acting. Because like you have a character who's emotional, they're practically sobbing, and their mouth is moving, and you see the emotion on their face, and you hear nothing. And it takes away from the scene.
The song,
in Sword and Shield, the guy singing. He was the rock singer's Marnie's older brother. He's singing, and you hear no voice, but you still hear the feedback on the microphone.
Yeah, and like guitar and whatever.
And it's like, why? Did you know that in Black and White, there's actually music with vocals in it? There's actually songs with proper singing, like vocals. So they've taken steps backwards because nostalgia. And because nostalgia sells these games, so they don't have to be high quality. They don't have to step it up.
I'm going to make an analogy.
The nostalgia's both good and bad in this case.
Make an analogy
Pokemon is nostalgia, right?
That may upset some people.
Okay, go for it, Zach.
Pokemon is the McDonald's of video games. You don't go to it because it's challenging and you feel accomplished.
True.
You go there because, for the Pokemon experience, you go there because, you want Pokemon. Hey, Pokemon looks good right now.
Yeah.
Like, you go to McDonald's, you're like, a Big Mac looks good right now. It's never as good as you...
It's easy filling comfort food.
But you're like, hey... It's
easy filling comfort food, and like those are stuck with it forever. They're like, it's familiar comfort.
And like whenever you go to McDonald's to get a Big Mac, you're always like disappointed in yourself. But you're like, whatever. It's good enough.
Yeah, because if you think about it, a lot of the, I mean,
it's the Big Mac. It's the Sorry, go ahead.
In my memory, like, if you think back to like the more hardcore, like long-term fans, the ones that are often given the most loud, like,
are
given the most acclaim are like the ones that really tried something new. Like people look back.
Yeah, people love
Coliseum
Legends
games.
Arceus.
Yeah, Legends Arceus is great because it changed how it changed up the formula. And some
You can just hunt Pokeballs at things in the
people
field.
who love it were disappointed because some of the features, like you could see some of the things from Legends Arceus, like how the overworld is designed, making its way over, but the ability to throw Pokeballs is gone. Like without, like you can throw Pokeballs, but all it does is it initiates battle. You can't, you know, it's like they definitely took a step backwards from it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, even building upon the combat style with the strong style and swift style stuff, also added another layer upon the turn-based battle system and stuff, and that was nowhere to be seen. And like,
I've got a headache.
yeah. You can crouch in the overworld, but it serves no mechanical purpose because they didn't carry over the stealth, stealthing through the grass or whatever from Legends Arceus. It's like the engine, it was there, but they took it all away.
I didn't even play Legends Arceus, but it was so entertaining seeing like people getting just rushed by a Blissey or whatever.
Yeah, or Snorlax. With the Alpha Snorlax with the red eyes. Zip in. It's like, holy crap.
Or just seeing, I mean, I guess it's still something that carried over, but like seeing Garchomp just flying overhead and stuff.
Yeah, it made the world feel more alive.
Yeah.
And then like the people look back at the Coliseum and XD, the Gale of Darkness, as great offshoot games, especially the story writing. Because did you know that with Coliseum and XD, did you know that the developers had never played a Pokemon game before that?
I guess that makes sense.
They came into it with the freshest of eyes, and they wrote a story that stuck with people. Like, people loved the way the characters were written, the way the story was made. It felt a little more mature and serious without being,
I remember playing a little bit of XD Gale of Darkness. We borrowed it from a friend.
And I played both of them.
I was confused when, like, you couldn't catch Pokemon.
Yeah, you could only catch, you could only snag Shadow Pokemon. And then you had to purify them so that they could get access to their full moveset and not sometimes hurt themselves with the Shadow attack.
Yeah, you couldn't really catch Pokemon normally, and then there were you could set a bait at a tree or whatever and get some Pokemon that way.
Yeah.
But, it was very different.
Yeah, but that is why people look back at it fondly, because it was so different from the nostalgic formula.
Plus, especially for the time, the main character was a lot older. Like, because we've seen in the Pokemon mainline games that the protagonists have kind of gradually looked older and older. But
Black 2 White 2 was the oldest protagonist in the mainline games, and then X and Y, I think it had them aged up a bit too.
But at
young
the time,
or something.
like when was XD Gale of Darkness
2005-ish, 2006, something like that, before 2010. It was Gen 3, I think.
It was 2005.
Okay, my first guess was right.
What was the Pokemon Gen 3 games?
Ruby Sapphire. Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were 2002, 2003.
So at that point, they had already established the formula.
So yeah, but what I was saying though, like with the age of the protagonists, they were still like kids, because XD Gale of Darkness came out after Gen 3.
Yeah. So Coliseum, you start off with your teenage protagonist who is a member of the evil team and defected, stealing the more portable of the snag gloves. There's two of them.
Right.
A more portable one, and blowing up the base along with the other one. Legit, in the opening cutscene, blows up the base while riding away.
Coliseum? Do you mean
Coliseum? And blows up the base while riding away on his motorcycle out there in that desert, which was based on Arizona.
Right.
That in and of itself set that game apart, that protagonist apart from everything. He's older than in all the games before it, and in all the games after, actually. And he was a former member of the evil team of that region, the Ore region.
It is Pokemon. It's Pokemon Coliseum.
XD Gale of Darkness was the second one. That was a follow-up, and you were playing an orange-haired guy, and he was younger. He was more in his early teens kind of age. So it went back to the younger protagonist.
Maybe my memories of those games have been blurred together because I remember the white-haired dude.
Yeah, that was Coliseum. We rented that one from Blockbuster back when that was still a thing. Nostalgia for Blockbuster.
Yeah. There's one Blockbuster that still refuses to.
Yeah. And then
it's funny.
Yeah. And then XD Gale of Darkness was the one that had the Shadow Lugia on the cover, and that one you play as the orange-haired guy, and instead of having a companion character, because in Coliseum you had the girl who could see the Shadow Pokemon.
Right.
In XD Gale of Darkness, your main character had basically a scouter.
Yeah, the Geostellar kind of.
Yeah, it was just one eye, but it would only extend out over one eye when it detected a Shadow Pokemon, and then it would show it to you. So you would only get the animation when you saw a Shadow Pokemon, or when the opponent was using one. And so you didn't need the companion to see it, And they went with a younger character, so it's a little more closer to the classic, because it was the second one of those. Coliseum was the one that deviated from the classic formula the most between the two.
Okay.
But XD Gale of Darkness refined the gameplay of Coliseum to a point where it was much better. Did you know that Coliseum didn't have the normal special split?
Oh.
The special, or the special attack, special defense, or no. Yeah, special attack.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah, it was just special. So it went off of the Gen 1 style, or Gen 1 2 style, just special.
Wait, then when did Pokemon Coliseum come out?
XD Gale of Darkness took the special split, and then also fixed all the, the fixes for the weakness types and stuff.
Okay, Coliseum came out late 2003 in Japan, early 2004 in North America. So that one was much more closely after Gen 3.
Yeah, and there's I was looking into this, but there's actually mods for Coliseum to bring the refinements from XD over into it, and make some extra fixes and stuff to make it a bit more modernized. And they even implement some more modern Pokemon into it as well. Mm-hmm. And fixes and stuff. I might look into playing that after, if my channel grows a bit more.
But yeah, safe to say, talking about all this, Pokemon is one of those games where people they love it when
is nostalgia, and it's both a good and a bad for it in different ways. Yeah.
Well, because sometimes people love it when they do something new, and then they just revert it anyway. Sometimes people don't like it when they do something new, and then they just revert it.
And then later on, they realize, oh no, those changes to the formula were actually good.
Dude, maybe the whole Gen 5 stink, that might have been part of the reason why they continued to lean so hard on nostalgia. I don't know.
Yeah, but then they did do Alola, which was after that. So, but for a while they did stick closely to the formula, and then they got a little break with Alola.
But
yeah,
then you have stuff like Mario, which just Mario is Mario. It's
you have 2D Mario, you have 3D Mario.
A lot of the time, it's the same game. The last time I remember personally Mario doing something different, really different, was Sunshine
with Flood, right?
Yeah. And
well, apparently Galaxy.
Some might say Galaxy, yeah. because it did like the spherical.
But I would say
stages
Galaxy
stuff.
and the spin attack. But I would say Galaxy was a
But it
lot
was still a little
to
closer.
64.
Yeah, it was a lot closer to a more classic. But like, Sunshine had the whole other thing with the water, like a lot of water,
The water and the flood
swimming,
mechanic.
the floating, the flood mechanics, all that. Yeah, but
Yeah,
most of the time, Mario is just Mario. You know what you're getting.
Especially when they did New Super Mario Brothers on the
Yeah.
DS, which brought back the 2D style gameplay with 3D graphics.
Great title, by the way. Great title.
And
it's not new anymore, but it's still
New
new.
Super Mario Bros. 2, New Super Mario Bros. U,
New Super Luigi.
yeah. Oh boy. But yeah, Mario's gone through obviously when you want to get the offshoots, it's when you go into like the Mario parties, the Mario sports games, and so on.
Yeah.
But Mario mainline, yeah, it's very samey for the most part, and even more nostalgia bound in the stories. It's always just, for the most part, save the princess. Now, Super Mario Land or Super Mario 3D World. That was it. Super Mario 3D World and 3D Land and 3D World. 3D Land was
3D
pretty
Land
good.
was on 3DS.
Yeah, and the 3D World on Wii U, that one changed. 3D World on Wii U changed things up drastically because like you weren't saving Princess Peach; she was there along for the quest. You were saving the Sprixies or whatever.
Although it's a strange, like these titles in these Mario games are just confusing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not even 3D because the 3D thing was on 3DS with 3D Land, but the 3D World on
Yeah, it
Wii
didn't
U,
have the serious
it's not
3D.
3D.
It was
I don't
3D
understand
in the
what
same way as Sonic 3D Blast, isometric.
Well, it's always 3D nowadays.
Yeah, but that aside, it's like Mario has gone through even less gameplay changes. Like honestly, Mario's the antithesis to Sonic. Like they are.
Yeah, and I've seen like videos talk about this.
Yeah, because while
like,
Sonic is constantly experimenting with new stuff, and which created the split in the fan base of your favorite style of Sonic gameplay being different from another large chunk of the fan base, of the player base.
Well-
and so no one Sonic game can please everyone.
well,
But with Mario, they didn't change things enough, so now it feels very samey. But they really did refine what that one series does.
Well, this is
like,
interesting
two
because
gameplay
I watched a video a while ago. I would credit the person who made the video if I remembered what it even was. But like they talk about how Mario, right? The character came from the gameplay. The only reason why he has a mustache and overalls is because it was the best thing that worked for the graphical style at the time because they didn't have that many pixels.
The 8-bit sprite.
To be able to delineate what's his legs from his arm and what's his face, and like it would have looked awkward if it
Limited
made
color
him
palettes and limited pixels. Yeah.
So the core of Mario was always the gameplay, and the character came from the gameplay.
Yeah.
Sonic was created as a character first.
Yeah, as a
And then
response to Mario not having much character.
And then the gameplay sort of stemmed from that in a way.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be cooler. He was supposed to be edgier at the time,
Yeah.
And so that's why.
Have more attitude.
And he's intrinsically more connected to change.
Yep.
Whereas Mario is intrinsically connected to that stability.
Was it that video called Sonic Isn't Cool, but that's why he's cool? Or something like that? How
Maybe.
basically his creation was tied to the 90s idea of cool,
Yeah.
his counterculture.
Yeah, that probably was it.
Yeah,
that probably was
made
it.
that. But yeah, and then,
But y'all can find it if you want.
yeah.
That-
and then like
He said what the title
but
was.
by Sonic staying true to the roots of who the character's supposed to be, that is what makes the franchise likable and cool, because he's not trying to be cool with like what's popular nowadays. He's not trying to be mainstream cool like a like a social media clout chaser, right? He's not trying to be cool in that way. He's trying to be, but by being what it is and not being afraid to experiment with the gameplay and but keeping the character Sonic recognizably Sonic. That is what makes it cool.
Yeah, but so ironically, we've sort of come full circle with the fact that we were talking about nostalgia and Sonic, but Sonic as a character and as a series as a whole is actually much less connected to nostalgia as part of its DNA.
Yeah.
It's always made changes for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So many of these games are so different. Sonic and the Black Knight, you're sword fighting with Sonic and you're on rails.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different things. And you look at something like Pokemon or Mario, you know, it's always kind of the same.
Yeah. How about Metroid? Metroid Dread came out as a follow-up to Metroid 2, Samus Returns on the 3DS. And
and it was nostalgia going back to the original Metroid.
style.
Whereas in the past, they made a drastic change to Metroid with Metroid Prime,
which recently got a remaster on Switch.
changing
and
it,
people love it
from, you know, the classic side-scrolling Metroidvania gameplay to first-person shooter. That is almost as drastic a change as you can get.
And at the time of Prime releasing, it was divisive among the fan base. Some loved it, some were like, this isn't 2D Metroid, it's not Metroid, true Metroid. But now it's looked back more nostalgically as one of the greatest series in the Metroid franchise. Prime 1 through 3 are seen as great, and Prime 1 got a remaster on Switch, and people love it.
But funny enough, this seems to be kind of a through line with a lot of these Nintendo nostalgia game series that we've brought up. You know, with Mario, with Pokemon, now with Metroid. You know, a game that is very different, took a left turn, wasn't met with much positivity at the time, but afterward became a lot more appreciated.
Yeah.
You know, like you mentioned before, the Gen 5 of Pokemon, stuff like Super Mario,
Showing
Sunshine, maybe,
showing the power of nostalgia to actually allow people to appreciate something for its own merits in hindsight, whereas some completely separated from the knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a paradox, because in becoming its own nostalgia, it becomes appreciated for
More objectively.
for bucking the nostalgia of the usual.
Yeah. It's circular.
the
It's
brand.
very circular, because nostalgia can be good, nostalgia can be bad, and sometimes when the deviation from the nostalgia becomes the new nostalgia, then it's seen more objectively, or people are able to look at it more objectively for its own merits rather than in comparison to what came before it.
But
In doing so, but sometimes they have to compare it in order to find that more objective. It's really complex.
but then whereas you have moments like that, you also have things like DMC, right? The DMC Devil May Cry, where they
Spit in the face
almost spit on the face of the nostalgia, and people hated that.
Gets the white
But
wig,
then
never
with
million years.
Pokemon, people can hate the reliance on nostalgia. There is no one answer to all of this.
No. So to call nostalgia empty pandering is just disingenuous and just objectively incorrect.
Yeah, and
it's
I think
a much more nuanced discussion.
Yeah, and I think this is an answer that we're going to have a lot, but there's nuance.
Well, that's the whole point of CounterPick News Perspectives, is to try and take varied perspectives at the nuance and to find a better, more balanced viewpoint upon the topic. And in this case, we definitely brought out how nostalgia isn't inherently a good or a bad thing. It depends on how it's used. And it also depends on, not the in the eye of the beholder. It's upon the beholder to look at it with an eye that's not quite so clouded by either loving the nostalgia and thinking it has to be nostalgic to be good, or thinking if it's nostalgic it's bad. You gotta take a balanced view.
All the other things that you see, being tired of the general miasma.
Yeah, like as people call it, revisionist history, right? It's like, oh, this thing was bad when it first came out, but now that it's older, now it changed my mind, now it's good. You know, that whole aspect of it. That happens a lot. Like, people are now starting to say, like Sonic Unleashed, right? Because of the Werehog stages, people are like, oh god, the speed stages on this are great, but the Werehog stages are bad, and the Werehog stages they're more numerous, and this game is bad.
To be fair, the Werehog stages were
they were
weird pacing.
Yeah, they were a bit of a drag at times. They're welcome.
I enjoyed it at the time, but that was because I was a child, and for some reason, in some ways, a child can have way more patience than
that's weird.
than later.
We also had more patience than most children too.
True.
But like, after it got past a certain amount of age, I would say about 5 years old, people started to say Sonic Unleashed is one of the greatest Sonic games ever. it's weird, but like, and you know, in the debates in the Sonic fandom, they call it the revisionist history stuff and all that. But I'm like, it's just weird how like when something bucks the trend of nostalgia, you know, the nostalgic foundations, the formula, some people will hate it, others will love it, it'll be divisive, and then when it's old enough that you can look back in retrospect, it seems like people tend to look at it more clearly, more on its own merits as an individual product, and then they're like, okay, you know what, now that I'm older and now I'm looking at it, this wasn't as bad as I felt it was at the time, and then looking at the whole product, okay, no, this actually is way better than I initially thought it was. People are saying that about Sonic 06, like, not Project 06 fan fix, but Sonic 06.
About the gameplay?
People are saying that the game is actually better than people gave it credit for back when it was.
I mean, okay, I would see that if they're talking about the story and the characterization.
Some people say that about the story, but even the gameplay, like and I can see it. The foundation of the gameplay was like basically Sonic Adventure 3. It's the bugs that harm it.
Yeah,
and the horrible loading times.
Yeah, but
the frequency of loading screens.
But there's so many bugs and weird things about the programming that at this point it's not just bugs; it's part of the it's part of the experience.
Yeah,
yeah. Like
one of the few Sonic games I could not play through.
Like I've seen weird bugs happen in like Sonic Adventure, you know, but.
Yeah,
we
or
never
like
experienced
Sonic 2. Yeah, we, for some reason, a lot of people's bugs in Sonic Adventure and Adventure 2, we never experienced. And so we're like
the good old, if I have to utter the name, Game Grumps getting sucked through the floor in
one of the
Sonic Adventure on, was it the beach?
Yeah, the first day it shows Sonic's story.
Sunside.
That never happened to us. Seaside Hill?
Seaside Hill, I think. But yeah, like
no, Emerald Coast.
Emerald Coast, yeah. But we never experienced.
It never happened.
So I don't know. Like that there's a difference there, and like a lot of Sonic games do have bugs in them, but there's a difference between like Sonic 06 it being consistent.
In a way,
I dare you to try to play Sonic 06 without running into a bug. Impossible.
No, at this point though, in Sonic 06, the bugs are the mechanics. Like they're that numerous.
I ran into one bug in Sonic Forces, but
yeah, and I never.
But
that was funny.
But yeah, no, that game is actually like very competently programmed. It's just made badly.
I mean, classic Sonic though, the physics did feel a little off.
Yeah,
and speed up, the acceleration,
no. Competently programmed doesn't mean it's good.
Fair enough.
You know, Sonic 06 would have been great if it
had more time in the oven.
If it wasn't put together with twine and bubblegum.
Yeah, to me, Xbox 360
but Sonic Forces was put together very solidly.
Yeah, they delayed Sonic Forces.
Why it was put together so solidly, but the
story,
the way it was put together, and it just wasn't good. It was
so flat.
It was a lot mediocre.
A lot of missed potential.
Yeah. So it's like it was well-made mediocrity as opposed to a game that could have been great.
Yeah, for sure.
The tangent. I brought us on a tangent there, but
but I mean, it still all ties in. Basically, nostalgia can actually allow people to see an older product for its own merits rather than, comparing it to the nostalgia before that. And it's so weird. It's such a circular topic that you can't really give it an umbrella statement or blanket statement of nostalgia is bad or nostalgia is good. It's just not the case. It depends on how it's used and how you're looking at it.
It's like a case study sort of thing.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases it can enrich something, and in a lot of cases it can take away from something.
Yeah, it's not really in a vacuum.
But it is definitely fascinating to analyze.
Well, like when people say nostalgia is bad, they're usually talking about the case where there isn't any other substance.
And it is unfortunate, but a lot of recent cases in entertainment of nostalgia pandering or catering to nostalgia has turned out for the worse, and has in some cases soured what came before, like the new trilogy of Star Wars, souring Anakin's story.
It's funny though, because that new trilogy had people saying, well, the prequels aren't that bad. actually.
Yeah, it's weird. The new trilogy made the prequel trilogy look better, and because the people are like, the new trilogy ruined Luke's story. That's what it was. Back in the past, though, when the prequel trilogy was new, people said that ruined Vader's story because of seeing Anakin, his roots as Anakin, and how whiny of a brat he was and stuff. They're like, this kind of ruins the character of Vader.
Except that was very different because it showed you what he was before he became Vader, whereas the sequel trilogy shows the future of the character that
and so the sequel trilogy, if they didn't like what they did with Luke, then they feel like it ruins Luke's arc from the original trilogy because it is what becomes him after.
Yeah.
While I didn't hate the Grey Jedi aspect, they did it for some of the wrong reasons. We already know that. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah, let's not get into the...
But yeah, so, and that's a case where... Because, honestly, of the sequel trilogy, the first movie was the best one, and it was the most nostalgic-driven one. It
was basically the first movie, but again...
Yeah, it rhymed with A New Hope.
In a lot of ways.
The Force Awakens rhymed with A New Hope, and it made it a good movie, and it set up some good storylines, like with Finn.
Yeah.
It was this one after that kind of ruined it by maybe going, again, too hard against the nostalgia and trying to change everything for their own agendas, right? In which case, sticking to the nostalgia might have been a little better. The Mandalorian was great because it felt like a more nostalgic, grounded story of a bounty hunter,
Mandalorian didn't feel like nostalgia to me. It just felt like its own kind of thing.
I guess. Some of the practical effects, it felt kind of nostalgic, though.
Yeah, but I mean...
And the characters. Some of the characters.
Well, yeah, but there haven't even been that many
but it was much
Star Warses that I've seen that didn't even have there's a difference between having Grogu do a Force thing sometimes, every now and then, and the usual Star Wars thing where there's a grounded character and then the main character is a Force user.
How about Luke being in it then at the end of the second season? It's in the first season and then in Book of Boba Fett.
Well, that was a nostalgia bit.
That was a much more nostalgic Luke, less sequel trilogy and more at the end of the original trilogy, and people loved him, right? Yeah. People loved that depiction of Luke because that was true Luke, right? That's how they felt. That was Luke as he should.
But, now that I think about it, wasn't it kind of a Deus Ex Machina? Because he can't they stopped one of those Beskar troopers, and then there's dozens of them, and then here's Luke. What?
Well, yeah, but I think the story was that they had sent out a signal or a message, and Luke found it.
Yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, it was kind of a Deus Ex Machina, and it was definitely catered to the nostalgia of Luke, as he was in the final of the original trilogy, and what a lot of the original fans kind of knew of him in the stories that take place after, the books and stuff, and the comics that take place after. But I think that was for a good. It was used for a good thing.
Yeah.
And then
I don't have that much.
But then for people in the Book of Boba Fett,
Star Wars
said Boba Fett was. They hated the depiction of Boba Fett because he wasn't the nostalgic depiction. He wasn't the silent and deadly bounty hunter. But
you know what?
But he had character development.
That's another thing. You just opened up another aspect of nostalgia. The nostalgia that people create in their own minds.
Yeah.
Because Boba Fett barely existed in the original trilogy,
and then
he was just a function of the story. Basically, he had like 5 lines.
He got dunked on by blind Han Solo accidentally turning with a pole in his hand and hitting the backpack.
Yeah,
he got dunked on. He got dumpstered in the worst way possible for such a tough bounty hunter that he was supposed to be.
Yeah, he didn't really do that much, and there was barely any character. But
it was just
fans,
right?
Loved his look, loved his vibe. And they got this idea of the characters that he...
And the extended universe that were decanonized when Disney bought them.
That too, but I guess I didn't really think of that because I never really...
Because remember, in the extended universe stuff, he fought Vader twice and survived, which is why he had Vader's respect.
Yeah, but still, even before those books, right?
Yeah.
People loved Boba Fett. It was this idea that
he was
so cool, and then they kind of just ran with it. But fans can create something in their minds that they become nostalgic for, and then when their expectations are upheld, whatever, they feel betrayed.
Yep.
Right?
When what was betrayed was their headcanon, not the official stuff.
Oh, God, I hate like head or something. Oh,
And then
when people say head.
And then in the Book of Boba Fett, people hated how he was like depicted because they're like he's more talkative, he has his personality different. But the Book of Boba Fett shows in flashbacks what caused this character development, what caused this new outlook on life, and it was stuff that would have done that to a person.
Yeah,
realistically speaking, and like his changing values, and they even reflected that in the colors on his armor, changing from revenge-oriented Mandalorian colors, like for the markings, to ones about honoring your forefathers. The change in his focus and his methodologies.
I didn't watch both.
Yeah, but the change in his focus and his methodologies are reflected in his armor, in his experiences after getting out of the Sarlacc pit. I didn't hate it like a lot of people did because it's character development.
The point is though, like people can create like nostalgia that isn't necessarily completely real.
Yeah,
and it kind of connects to like again circling back to Sonic, like expectations, and how like these different groups in Sonic fandom basically have all these different expectations
or preferences,
and Sega was having difficulty trying to cater to all of them because the fact is you can't. Like what I would say is like have two lines basically, have the 2D and the 3D. There you go.
Yeah,
you can be pretty good. Like boost and non-boost and adventure, whatever. Like just figure out the thing to do for 3D. But yeah, like you can't. Things always fail when you try to uphold like all of the fans' expectations, and a lot of those expectations are driven by nostalgia, whether it's real or imagined.
Yeah, it's definitely a very.
I'm not sure if we're necessarily talking about nostalgia.
Well, it's tied to it, but it's definitely crazy because nostalgia can create expectations.
Yeah.
Whether they be legitimately founded expectations or not, it depends on the person and what those expectations are. But nostalgia is what's at the core of it, honestly.
Yeah.
And nostalgia, I guess this is another element of this nostalgia. It's not always what's in the official material. Sometimes it's what's in the heads of the fandom.
Yeah,
based on limited material.
Sometimes nostalgia is what a thing made you feel, but some people can get that confused with what reality actually was.
Yeah. Exactly. What feels isn't always accurate to the reality of it, and that's just a fact of things. And that's why you need to be able to step out of the frame to see the full picture, as we try to do here, as kind of the foundation of this whole show.
Because like the very definition of nostalgia here is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or a place with happy personal associations.
Yeah.
So it's
heavily emotional,
very emotion based, and sometimes these things can result in an unrealistic picture of the thing that someone is nostalgic for.
Yeah. Crazy. I would say we should have started with the definition, but I think in discussing all these nuances, it helped us to gain a better understanding of the definition.
Yeah, I did have the definition up earlier, but like with what we were talking about, it didn't seem to be
slot in right.
Relevant.
Yeah, but I think that's the perfect way to end this discussion, actually. I think we pretty much brought up everything we can with what is immediately available in our heads.
Yeah.
That was our discussion on nostalgia. So we want to pass over the torch to you. So you listeners, make sure to let us know what you think about nostalgia, about the good and bad things about it, how you feel about when things stick to nostalgia or when they deviate from the nostalgia.
Things you're nostalgic for, what you've seen about nostalgia, whatever.
Yeah, share your thoughts in whether it be in reviews on the podcast or in on this episode of the podcast or in the comments on YouTube, or heck, you can even tweet at us. Just use the hashtag CounterPick_pod. That's the hashtag I've created for this
Nice.
this podcast. So just put your thoughts. You can at me or SciPrime. So you can at s-factorsam or SciPrime, s_factor_sam, or SciPrime, one word.
Yeah, SAI, the word prime, like Optimus.
Yeah, but as long as the hashtag CounterPick_pod is there, we'll be able to find it easy. And then we'll, if we see anything like that, we'll definitely take a little time in the next episode to, maybe at the beginning of the episode to discuss what y'all have said.
Ooh, like a viewer feedback section?
Yeah, but at the beginning of the episode, so that we could, before we get into the topic of the new topic,
Maybe we'll
follow up to the previous one at the beginning. And then go into the topic.
Maybe,
I like that.
Maybe it'll be at the beginning, maybe it'll be at the end.
I like the idea of being at the beginning before we start talking about a different topic altogether.
We'll talk.
But yeah, so that's how we're going to do it from there. So definitely let us know what you think. And then also give us any feedback on like audio quality, some of the more mechanical things about this podcast. How did we sound, our voices and stuff, and so on, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, we'll love to have some nice, thoughtful discussions, yeah?
Yep, and on YouTube, we'll both be in there. Twitter, we'll both be in discussions on that for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been s-factor-sam, or Dr. Sam, and
SciPrime.
And we'll see you next time, hopefully next month, with a new topic.
Woo!
Have a great one.